Good evening. Welcome to our study tonight. Before I begin, I just want to take time to thank all of you that write to us and that donate and support us. We don't ever push anything like that, but obviously you've been very gracious and we're just thankful for that. But let me get you into the news tonight and tell you what's going on. The new normal, how apocalyptic type events are reshaping our world. Our world is witnessing apocalyptic events so frequently that many of us are really starting to become numb to it. We hear it so many times. Major wars are raging, children in Africa are literally dropping dead from starvation, and billion-dollar disasters, excuse me, are hitting us more frequently than we've ever seen before. But as long as these tragedies are not affecting us directly, and here's what it is, most people don't really care too much. Isn't that true? As the levels of worldwide suffering rises, it seems as though hearts are getting colder at the same time. Many prefer to ignore the apocalyptic things that are happening in the world because it's just too much for them to handle emotionally. According to a brand new study, the number of armed conflicts in 2023 was the most that we have ever seen in a single year since World War II. Last year, 59 conflicts, of which 28 were in Africa. We are literally living in a time of wars and rumors of wars. But it isn't relevant to us sometimes because our sons and daughters are not being gunned down on the killing fields of eastern Ukraine. Most of us in the Western world aren't really moved by all the bloodshed. In Ukraine, 30,500 people have died so far. But honestly, for you and I, it doesn't really affect us. We hear the numbers, but it's not a personal thing. Every single day, more lives are being wasted. But if you think that things are bad now, just wait until Israel and Hezbollah start lobbing thousands of missiles, they're already starting, back and forth. Wait until China invades Taiwan, or the Russians and NATO begin directly pummeling one another. Meanwhile, global hunger continues to grow. The number of people facing acute food insecurity last year was the highest ever recorded. The number of people threatened by hunger in the world has never been so high. In 2023, 281 million people in 59 countries were facing acute food insecurity. Imagine if we took all our monies and instead of gearing it to wars all over the world, we geared it to people who are hungry. It's really pathetic when you think about it. The Global Report on Food Crisis is a roll call of human failings. 10 years ago, world leaders dreamed of a day when hunger would be eradicated on the planet. Today, that dream is completely dead. Right now, hunger is exploding in areas all over the continent of Africa. In Sudan, people are literally eating dirt and leaves. They're boiling leaves to fill their stomachs. It makes me sad even just to think about that. 25 million in Sudan, and they need humanitarian help. 18 million people in Sudan are facing acute food insecurity, and 5 million people are at emergency levels, approaching famine as the country's civil war passes the 1-year mark. Since it isn't happening to us, though, most of us really don't care. It's in the back of our minds, if that. But hunger is growing in America, too. According to one recent survey, a quarter of the entire United States population is now skipping meals due to crazy high food prices. And Biden will not take any responsibility that his inflation is actually crippling this country. It should never happen. 80% of Americans say they have felt a notable increase in grocery costs in recent years. Food insecurity is a major issue in this country as millions of Americans don't have enough food to eat or don't have access to healthy food. This is just the beginning, and I hope people are really taking me serious. We're living also in a time when major natural disasters are becoming more frequent. Last year, our world was hit by more billion-dollar disasters than ever before. $63 billion weather disasters in 2023 alone. Unfortunately, we're probably going to top that number this year. So far in 2024, there's already been $11 billion disasters in the United States alone. Almost every day, we're seeing things happen, and here's the phrase, that we've never seen before. For example, storm chasers in the middle of the country just recovered a piece of hail that was about the size of a pineapple. Val and Amy Castor, veteran storm chasers, Amy said this on an Oklahoma City TV, who found some of these, told KWTV, "It's the biggest hail I've ever seen, and I've been chasing storms for more than 30 years. We aren't supposed to have hail that size. This is just the new normal, where the old rules simply don't apply anymore. In California, there's been an alarming series of earthquakes during the past couple weeks. I'm going to tell you a little bit about one towards the end of this in the news. Um, having, having half a dozen earthquakes with a magnitude of 3.0 in a week, hitting three distinct parts of Southern California, all in populated areas, not a big one. Other nations still have been getting flooding, wildfire. South American country counts 82% of the 7.6 million probable cases of dengue recorded fever in the entire world. So that's for in 2024. It has seen the most serious dengue outbreak ever recorded in Brazil. Cases were 328% higher than recorded in the same period last year. And they tell me if you get it, you'll never forget it because it's the worst pain you could possibly have. So many pestilences are causing major problems all over the globe right now. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the number of Mpox cases have surged an all-time high. And it's the form of the disease that has particularly high death rate. 19,000 cases and 1,000 deaths. It's being reported that scientists have discovered, watch this, giant viruses in the enormous sheets of ice that cover Greenland. The idea of a giant virus lurking on a vast ice sheet might sound like the plot of the latest science fiction blockbuster. But without a doubt, there will be more global pandemics in the future. All of the trends are going to continue to intensify. Our apocalyptic new normal is here. We live in a world that has gone completely and utterly mad. And you can try to ignore that if you wish, but sadly, it is the truth. There's a lot of economic news I want to share with you tonight. And basically, I can't believe how bad it's getting. It seems every week it's worse and worse. 63 United States problem banks are nearly insolvent, but you're not going to know which ones they are. The FDIC recently released their quarterly report with some disturbing news. They have a list of problem banks that are near insolvency because of unrealized losses to the tune of $517 billion in 1 quarter, 4 months. Not year over year, not decade over decade, over a course of just 3 months. It's an absolutely shocking increase. Residential mortgage-backed securities are the brunt of the problem. Sound familiar? Would you remember the subprime mortgage crisis of 2008? It was over around $1 trillion in mortgage-backed securities that caused the bubble to burst. We just went from sort of okay to $500 billion in just 3 months. It's really a big deal. So which problem banks are in trouble? Well, are they big banks? Are they small banks? In 2008, we knew the banks. The list is so confidential because to inhibit the likelihood of the bank runs finishing off these institutions, the FDIC does not want to publish the names of these 63 banks because they're afraid people will have a bank run and that would destroy the banks. So we just don't know. They're not telling us. We watched this happen with several banks last year when only 12 were on the brink. Now there's 63. Things are rough in the U.S. economy, and the FDIC seems to be making plans to handle further collapse. How are they doing that? By helping themselves to your money that you have on deposit. Just listen, this is absolutely scary. You think that your deposits are safe, tucked away in your bank account. Well, not necessarily true. If I'm right, a lot of people are going to be financially devastated in a not so distant future. Our wealth and risk are dangerously concentrated. Here's a quick history. Back in the 90s, there were 37 major banks in the United States. The number is now down to 4. Citigroup, JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo. According to the FDIC's own numbers, trillions of dollars of customers' deposits are uninsured. Let me repeat that. Trillions of dollars of our deposits are uninsured. Simply put, that means that money, your money, could be used for a bank bail-in if things go sideways. If you think I'm crazy, you don't have to go very far back in history to see exactly that happening. Greece came within days in 2015 of having all accounts with 8,000 euros or more trimmed by 30%. That's not giving you interest. That's taking your principal by 30%, euphemistically calling it a haircut. The Bank of Portugal funded bail-ins of senior bondholders with deposits personal deposits in 2016. And nearly everyone who's been watching the economy for long looked on horror when Cyprus raided all their personal accounts overnight to fund a bail-in 2012, proving that governments could and would help themselves to the money of the people. Depositors with over 100,000 euros faced a 10% one-time tax. Smaller accounts were hit with a tax of 7%. You're not as protected as the banks want you to be. Even Investopedia admits that you will not be covered if you have excess of $250,000 in the bank. FDIC bankers are openly talking about the bail-in. In a 3.5-hour fireside chat, FDIC bankers openly discuss the potential of a bail-in, taking your money. They talk about the strategic options open to the FDIC, making moves over the weekend, and also mentioning that 40 million accounts they have to dip from at the time of the resolution. 40 million accounts, people lose their money. This is not me saying that the bankers are coming for your money. This is the bank saying that they're coming for your money. Now, it's possible that this contingency plan will not be enacted. I hope it's not. We may get within days like we did in Greece, but the fact that strategies are being put into place to do so should be a giant clanging warning bell right in our ears. So what do I say about that? Well, if you do have over $250,000 in the bank, that's what the FDIC insures up to. I would suggest you take some of that out and buy some real estate right away. I also will let you know that there's a crash coming that we know the Antichrist is going to seize upon. We know people won't be able to buy and sell. There's a new world economic system coming. And all these world economies that are failing, including the United States, is providing impetus for that, and it's accelerating it. Continuing to follow the money, universities soak up $13.1 billion in Arab Muslim funds. Arab funding of American universities, you should tell you why you see all the protests on campus. Donors, recipients, and impact, American universities have accepted nearly $55 billion in foreign funding. Nearly 1/4 came from donors from Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Qatar. Qatar is by far the largest source, donating $6 billion. We know very little about how the money is spent because of the combined efforts of the universities and the United States Department of Education, the DOE, under President Joe Biden, to conceal the information about the donors and the purpose of their donation. Sounds fishy to me. Cornell is the largest recipient, $2.1 billion. That means $1.4 billion, more than half that money, is taken from Arab sources, and it's unaccounted for. And that's the norm. 76% of all Arab funding have no description at all. Georgetown is the second largest recipient of Arab funds, almost $1 trillion. But not one of its 96 donations lists a purpose for the donation. The anti-Israel campus protests have renewed interest in whether universities are being influenced by Arab donors who may be hostile towards Israel. Well, and we know that that's definitely happening. So here's my take on it. If we had a government with a brain, which we don't, we would pass legislation to ban donations to U.S. universities from terrorist countries, from extremists, and from any other anti-American source and individuals. But then our government would really have to have a brain, and they don't, obviously. A former English diplomat, John Kelly, observed, they expect to return these Arab nations upon their donations to institutions of learning, whether it be in a form of subtle propaganda on behalf of Arab or Islamic causes, which you're seeing right now, not just subtle, or preferential admission to their nationals, however unqualified. Gifts to American universities are also designed to enhance the image of the Arab states, their rulers, and their religion. So, for example, Saudi Arabia wants Americans to forget that 15 of the 19 hijackers on September 11, 2001 were Saudi nationals. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has sought ties with prestigious universities to promote his image as a progressive leader who is modernizing his country and to offset the negative attention these received from his alleged role in the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. So Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and Harvard allows Mohammed bin Salman to project an image of being Western-leaning progressive leader and gives legitimacy to his growing power base he's creating. Arab states are primarily motivated to support universities to enhance their image, their citizens, and discourage criticism of Islam, and not to recognize Israel or the Jews as legitimate. And our government lets this happen all the time. Let's go on a little bit more. Some more dire warnings. Red flags everywhere. Banks, small businesses, and retailers are all in trouble. Do you hear this on the nightly news? Do you hear this on social media? Do you hear it on CNN and NBC and even Fox? You don't hear anything about this. They're too stuck in this pathetic back and forth with Biden and Trump. I'm tired of hearing that, to be honest with you. God's going to have his sovereignty. He's going to do what God does. So we don't hear anything about the economy. So we're not in tune to it. So if the economy is fine, we do hear that the economy is fine. Bidenomics is working. Yeah, it means that he's getting money for foreign countries and he's keeping it. That's Bidenomics. So if the economy is fine, like they're telling us, why are so many signs of trouble all around us? Those that keep insisting that the United States economy is heading in the right direction conveniently ignore the very troubling facts and figures that I regularly share with you. When you take an honest look at the cold, hard numbers that the economy keeps producing, there's only one logical conclusion. Our entire system is crumbling, and it appears that conditions are soon to get significantly worse. Again, the FDIC's most recent report tells us 63 problem banks are in trouble to the tune of $517 billion. But there's more. At this point, it's clear we have never faced a commercial real estate crisis this magnitude in our, again, entire history. Falling prices, falling demand, rising interest rates, vacancy rates in commercial buildings have soared, again, to new levels. The collapse of the biggest bankruptcy in 2023 was the failure of the Pennsylvania Real Estate Investment Trust. The company had loaded up with more than $1 billion in liabilities. The collapse of the commercial real estate market could easily spill over into the financial sector. That's because a lot of loans are coming due very soon. About $1.2 trillion of commercial real estate debt in the United States will mature over the next 18 months. A lot of financial institutions will fail during those months and during the years ahead of us. Meanwhile, one recent survey discovered that approximately 2/3 of all small businesses in the United States are teetering on the brink of disaster. 2/3 of all small businesses. This new survey reveals that the 2/3 of small business owners are terrified by the state of the economy under Joe Biden's watch. And ongoing downward trends will lead them to having to close their businesses. Maybe we don't care about what's happening to small businesses, but we should, because close to half of all workers in the United States are employed by small businesses. 46% of all employees in the U.S., around 61.6 million people in total, are employed by small businesses. The U.S. economy lost a whopping 408,000 jobs last month. You don't hear Biden talking about any of that, do you? Sadly, I think a lot more months like that are coming. Retailers are also struggling bad right now. The U.S. economy seems to be finally cracking. This month, a slew of retailers started to lay off more and close down stores. Target, Lowe's, Macy's, Kohl's, Best Buy, Food Locker reported negative year-over-year sales comps, and that's before adjusting for the inflation. Others, Dollar General and Burlington, reported some store sales was negative when adjusted for inflation. Also Walmart. At one time, Walmart was an unstoppable retail behemoth. But now even Walmart is closing down stores. Across the country are closing. The multi-million-dollar corporation has closed 9 stores so far this year, which could be a warning sign for other retail giants. You remember, and you know, you go past the Walmart, sometimes there's no place to park. I remember now they're starting to close down stores. Of course, the stores that Walmart is shuttering are just a drop in the bucket compared to what other chains are doing. We're on pace to lose, are you ready for it? 7,800 stores in 2024. So if you go past some malls and you see some vacancies, you're going to see a whole lot more in 2024. When the Drudge Report used the term retail apocalypse in one of their headlines on this past Monday morning, that was not an exaggeration at all. We are literally in the early stage of a historic meltdown. And the outlook for the months ahead is extremely bleak. Major economists are warning that we should brace ourselves for a bigger crash than we had in 2008. I hate bringing this news. I hate telling this. But it's a warning to us to scale down and get our houses in order and our economies in order. They're saying that the everything bubble has still yet to burst and may be a bigger crash than the Great Recession So our leaders were able to keep the game going for years. Here it is, just talking about it off camera. But pumping trillions upon trillions of dollars into the system. The system should have failed long ago, but they propped it up. They kept putting Band-Aids on it. And now the whole body is covered with Band-Aids, and it's bleeding from everywhere. They didn't fix anything. They've tried to prop it up, never fixed a thing. But our entire system is literally crumbling all around us. And as it crumbles, we're going to see chaos on a scale that most people don't even want to imagine. Already, major cities from coast to coast are being terrorized by theft, violence, drugs, homelessness, gangs, and anarchy. So if things are bad already, what's America going to look like once our leaders completely lose control of the economy? Historically, of course, we are Americans. We react to crisis only after it hits. And I'm telling you, we need to prepare right now. All right, let me give you a little bit further. Put this under moral decay. Leftist hate map brands conservatives haters for opposing wokeness. So you and I are haters. I could be arrested for a hate crime because I oppose wokeness. Now wokeness is sliding away a little bit from the corporate media, as I've told you a little bit before. Actually, no, excuse me, corporate America, as they're losing profits. But it's still very much alive. It's impossible to escape it. Everywhere you turn, you see rainbow flags, which I'll tell you that is later on in our study. Black Lives Matter signs or calls for DEI. We see teachers forcing DEI training on staff, FBI agents marching pride parades, Target stores sell transgender swimsuits, and Bud Light teams up with a grown man who acted like a little girl. Even Buzz Lightyear and Star Wars have gone woke. Meanwhile, the Biden administration is falling over itself to push transgender pronouns, to promote drag queens, and to celebrate pride. And you remember, even on Easter Sunday. It's enough to drive anyone with common sense up a wall. It bugs me tremendously. If we don't get on board with woke, you oppose democracy. You're a bigot. You're a racist. Or like this one, you're a Christian nationalist. Where does the insane idea come from? It comes from the spin masters at the Southern Poverty Law Center. This is ground zero of wokeness. Let me explain. Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, warns that the right is trying to take control of the culture and erase the poor, persecuted left-wing minority groups, while SPLC covers for the woke movement. It calls conservative efforts ethnocide, the erasure of ethnic groups' cultures akin to genocide, and Christian supremacy. No, it's Christian values. We're against LGBTQ and gay marriage because our Christian values are at odds with it. Woke ideology has seeped into the education system at an alarming pace. Critical race theory, CRT, transgender ideology teaches kids that males can become females and vice versa. You know all this. SPLC efforts to weaken the suffocating grasp of woke ideology on American institutions amounts to cultural tyranny. They're the ones pushing it everywhere. They're the ones coming out with tests for corporations to have a certain score because they have a high tolerance and they promote LGBTQ material. The SPLC warns against dominionism, the idea that only Christians have the right to control government and all influential posts in society and culture. Let me say this. I could care less about controlling our government. All I want to do is not see the fact that your children, my grandchildren, your grandchildren have to go into dressing rooms with the opposite sex. It has nothing to do with trying to overtake the culture. It's about values. The SPLC strains to connect its attack on school choice to racial segregation. They also demonize efforts to defend religious freedom. They also condemn an effort to restrain the federal bureaucracy. The SPLC faults the at least 9 hate and anti-government groups with strong ties to the Republican Party. Most of them are Christian. When a conservative launches a plan to counter this influence and restore sanity to the situation, the SPLC cries foul. Perhaps the most galling aspect of the SPLC's report involves anti-Semitism. They admit that anti-Semitism on college campus is a legitimate issue. Are you kidding me? Yet it does not condemn any group for harassing Jews on campus. This is what's driving this whole insane program. Alex Soros, he is the son of Soros, who has now reigns over his father's Open Society Foundation. is providing free political advice to Democrats and opposing Trump. So I thought when George Soros was gone or too much, didn't have much of his brain left, that it would stop. His son is 10 times worse than him. So ignore all that and remember this. It is the height of anti-Semitism that suggests that George Soros may be impacting our political system. And of course, SPLC doesn't just defend Soros out of the goodness of its heart. It has financially benefited from Soros Foundation to promote open society, which gave the SPLC $750,000 grant in 2016. Rather than addressing the anti-Semitism on campus, the SPLC weaponizes the issue against us, conservatives, and it defends its political allies. So in short, if you disagree with the SPLC's agenda, you're part of white supremacy and supporting ethnocide, Christian supremacy, authoritarianism, whatever new term they can think of to make it feel like you're nefarious. The only way to escape these epithets is to get with the all government, all of society woke CRT transgender program, which isn't authoritarian at all. So unless you're like them and you believe like them, you're automatically put in left field. Oh, should I say right field? Let me give you this one. School uses $10,000 grant to hand out chest binders for Pride Day. New Mexico High School used $10,000 in grant funds to purchase chest binders and pro-LGBTQ books for its library, emails show. Centennial High School received the grant from a pro-LGBT nonprofit, and it's called It Gets Better, to construct a gender-inclusive closet that would provide supplies and clothes for trans and gender non-conforming students. So $8,370 were spent on chest binders to hand out at a Pride Day event. I don't even get it. You're spending money on stuff that, how many people are even how many kids are going to even want that? And if you do convince them to want that, you're spending all this money on that. Could we not use that money more to the education of our children? It's just ridiculous to me. The school opened the closet to all students, but they did something else. They took the money and they spent it on other gay things. It Gets Better awarded grants to other schools across the United States to push LGBT initiatives through school-based projects. They took that money designated for chest binders, used only a little bit of it, and used it to evangelize other schools in the woke ideology of LGBTQ. Telluride Middle School in Colorado used their $10,000 to change bathrooms into being gender neutral. A Hawaii school used their grant to establish a program to educate parents on having LGBTQ related conversations. It's way out of hand. Do we need a change in Washington? Oh man, like yesterday. All right, let me go a little bit more and give you some things about planet Earth. I told you about the big one coming, but I really want to give you a real understanding of what's going on here. Cascadia subduction zone, the looming threat of a massive earthquake and tsunami. And again, this is not just conspiracy theories, this is from science. We're being told that someday, an absolutely massive earthquake along the Cascadia subduction zone will send a giant wall of water toward the west coast of the United States. We're talking about a disaster that would be greater than anything we've ever witnessed in our entire history of our country. And scientists are openly warning us. It's just a matter of time before this happens. It is being projected that a wall of water would be up to 100 feet tall. It'll cause immense destruction and devastations. Buildings will be flattened. Vehicles will be picked up and tossed around like toys. And countless number of people will instantly go to their watery graves. If you are directly in the path of such a tsunami, there will be absolutely no escape. The Cascadia subduction zone has been making lots of headlines lately. The following comes from an article that was recently posted by NBC News. A silent colossus lurks off the Pacific coast, threatening hundreds of miles of coastline with tsunamis and devastating earthquakes. For decades, scientists have warned us about a megathrust fault line that runs from Vancouver to Cape Mendocino in California. When the fault snaps, it will reshape life in Oregon, Washington, and California, and beyond. It's been more than 300 years since we've seen a megathrust like this, since we've seen it happen along the Cascadia subduction zone. And so far, most of us, and for most of us, it's difficult to imagine what that would look like. Remember what I told you? We react to a crisis after it happens. According to IFL Science, Such an earthquake could produce tsunami waves that travel at speeds up to 500 miles an hour. You're not going to travel faster than that. You're not going to get away from it. Megathrust earthquakes are the most powerful on Earth, and they arise from subduction zones, where one of the Earth's plates is slipping over another. That's what a fault line is. You have a plate, tectonics, our world is carved up into plates, and one of them will slip under another. That right there is a tension area. That's the fault zone. When that slips, then you have these megathrusts. As the plate slips and releases, it generates enormous amounts of energy that goes on and out into the surrounding seawater, sending the energy shooting out horizontally in the form of a tsunami. Again, the resulting wave can travel at 500 miles an hour. In addition to moving at astonishing speeds, we're also being told that the wall of water could be 100 feet high or higher. A team of scientists that have been studying the Cascadia subduction zone just released their findings, and what they discovered is extremely alarming. The Cascadia subduction zone is actually made up of 4 different segments, and that can actually make it even more dangerous than previously thought. Using underwater mapping techniques, scientists have mapped the Cascadia subduction zone, a 600-mile fault line extending from southern Canada to northern California. And I did a little research for you, and I want to show you this subduction zone. Here's, to the right-hand side is the continental United States. You'll see Vancouver, and you'll see Washington, Seattle. This right here is where that plate is. It's right off the western coast of California, Washington. It runs 600 miles. And basically, this would be a deep earthquake. This is what's going to shift. You can see this line. Let me show you another one. So this is the fault line. When that gives way, it displaces water and pushes a tsunami, and it's going to be extremely devastating. The researchers concluded that the zone has the potential to unleash a 9+ magnitude earthquake, 9+. This isn't the San Andreas Fault. This is a fault line that's 100 times worse than the San Andreas Fault. It'll kill more than 20,000 people. It'll cause more than $180 billion in damages in just Oregon and Washington alone. And they could face a wave of long-term deaths due to disease and exposure to dead bodies, animal carcasses, contaminated water, and hazmat spills from commercial, industrial, and household sources. I know it sounds really bad, but others actually believe that the damage will even be far worse. Very ominous quote from the head of FEMA's Region X. He warns that when a really big earthquake finally strikes the Cascadia subduction zone, everything west of Interstate 5 will be toast. What does that mean? Well, by the time the shaking has ceased and the tsunami has receded, the region will be unrecognizable. Kenneth Murphy, who directs FEMA's Region X, says he's responsible for Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Alaska. Says our operating assumption is that everything west of Interstate 5 will be toast. Everything west of Interstate 5 covers some 140,000 square miles, including Seattle, Tacoma, Portland, Eugene, Salem, the capital of Oregon, Olympia, the capital of Washington, and some 7 million people. This isn't a hypothetical scenario, which may or may not happen. Scientists assure us that it's just a matter of time, short time, before this big quake happens. I'm entirely convinced that it will happen sooner rather than later, because our planet has become extremely unstable, and there's scripture to prove it. Paul says, for we know that the whole creation, the whole world, groans and travails in pain together until now. Romans 8:22. So, it looks like things don't get too good, doesn't it? Let me give you this also. This week, and again, you won't hear it in the news at all, a big event happened. China, not landed a man, this is a different picture. They landed a vehicle on the dark side of the moon. Now, you have to ask yourself a couple questions. China's just saying they want to pick up some moon rocks from the dark side. That is totally bogus. What China is doing is they're setting themselves up for space wars. The dark side of the moon, why the dark side of the moon? Because you can't see it. We never see the dark side of the moon. No telescope, our moon never turns that dark side. It revolves around us, but it never turns that dark side. We can't see it. And so, let me show you how insightful President Trump was when he was our president. President Trump made a new force. He signed into law legislation creating the first new armed service since 1947, the U.S. Space Force. He signed the National Defense Authorization Act during a ceremony at Joint Base Andrews on Maryland on December 20th, 2019. He knows that the next war is going to be raining down from outer space. What China is doing is they're going to set up a military base on the dark side of the moon, unobservable by us. I'm telling you, it's getting to the point where we are seeing things really happening at a very advanced pace. And that it makes me excited in a sense, because I know if they're happening at an advanced pace, Jesus is closer to coming back. All right, that's in the news for tonight.